America, the land of the free. We walk the streets overwhelmed by our own issues, believing we live in safety, but there's evil among us, those who live with an uncontrollable yearning to kill. They look just like us, act seemingly normal, and talk with a gilded tone of empathy. But these people are not empathetic. They are some of the most deadly forces in existence, commonly known as serial killers. Houston, Texas, in the 1970s, is an industrial city on the verge of a big boom. One of the neighborhoods is on Houston's northwest side, a neighborhood called the Heights. The neighborhood at the time was also infamous for runaway teenagers. Locals, including a 15-year-old Wayne Henley, help in the search effort, but after months, there isn't a single lead.
Well, it was often assumed that if a teenage boy was missing, that he was a runaway, or he just decided to lay out several nights staying with friends.
Dorothy Hilligeist refuses to believe her son would just run away. She offers a $1,000 reward and even seeks the advice of a psychic. None of the runaways ever return home, but the cops are still oblivious to the evil lurking right under their noses. In the early 70s, the Houston, Texas Police Department still didn't have a missing persons database. August 8, 1973, a terrified teen reports a fatal shooting. The discovery exposes a crime so chilling that even detectives find themselves reeling in horror.
Got a call on August 8, about 8 p.m. He said he shot Dean Carl. He admitted to everything.
Inside, he finds the naked body of a man lying face down in the hallway. Police ID the victim as a Dean Coral, otherwise known as the Candyman. Coral was nicknamed the Candyman because when he was younger, his parents owned a candy shop, and he would often give free candy to children. The 70s was a time of peace and protest. Many of the younger generations would turn to drugs and alcohol to solve their problems. Henley and Brooks were no exception. The most common place that they would use was the house of Dean Coral.
Hey man, where are we going?
This is Dean Coral's house. We can smoke pot here.
Henley in later interviews stated that he immediately knew Coral was a homosexual. Henley never let on to Coral that he had his suspicions.
Hey Dean, this is Elmer Henley.
We always knew that Elmer and Brooks were up to no good. And boy, were we right.
Mama, it's Wayne. Mama, I killed Dean.
Shortly after being taken into custody, Henley lets police officials know that Dean Coral is a child murderer and took part in the disappearances over the past 2 years. Henley led police to a boat shed and pointed to the stall at number 11. In the shed was bikes, shoes, and along the ground were raised lumps where Dean had buried the bodies. By almost midnight that night, 8 bodies had been recovered from the boat shed. Most of the bodies were overlapped to fit in the small space. People on the scene couldn't believe their eyes. This was the first mass murder of its time. While searching Dean Coral's house, the investigators found 8 sets of handcuffs, rope, tape, and petroleum jelly. They also found a thing called a body board, which was used when Dean Coral would have his way with the boys. Brooks and Henley later confessed that they were the ones bringing the children to Coral. They would often lure the children in by using drugs or offering them work. Coral set up a deal with Henley that for every child he brought, he would give him $200.
Hey man, come here.
What's the deal, man?
I'm going over to a buddy's house. He's having a few friends over. It's a little party. You want to come?
Sure, bro.
Alright, get in.
Alright.
Henley is currently serving 6 life sentences in the Pasadena Penitentiary with little possibility of parole. His partner, David Brooks, is only serving 1 life sentence. People like this forever changed America and are a tragic yet vital part of history. Coral and Henley changed the way parents protect kids and made missing persons a vital part of the community. Out of 27 bodies, 3 have still not been identified and may never be.
information or any evidence to indicate there were any more than 27 victims, because 27 was all that Wayne Henley and David Brooks knew about. But it's quite possible, in fact, it may be probable, that there were others that they did not know about.
Hi there, my name is Stephen Fuente. I was born in Houston, Texas in 1963 in Heights Hospital. I grew up, it was a different time, a simpler time. We could walk to school, which I had to do every day when I went to elementary school. In 1973, I was 10 years old, and my elementary school was 3 blocks away from my home. We were too close to be bused to school, so we had to walk every day, along with all the other neighborhood kids. And we never noticed or heard of any problems or missing children. It wasn't until it was discovered of what happened in 1973 that we realized that there was a monster lurking in our neighborhood. But there were no community papers. The school didn't put out flyers. They didn't say that these kids were missing. Nobody knew nothing. And at 10 years old, all you want to do is ride your bike, go play with your friends. It wasn't until the discovery of all the atrocities that were happening in our local area that our parents changed the way we did things. We were no longer allowed to get out there and ride our bikes for hours on end. They kept closer tabs on us. But mind you, back then we didn't even have a telephone. We didn't have a home phone. So there was really no way for anybody to really know what's going on. So we had to check in quite often, leave notes, let them know where we were going, where before we didn't have to do any of that. We were going somewhere, now we had to write notes and say, hey, I'm going to be over here. I'm going to be at my friend's house. And I remember we were out actually late one night, and it was a group of us, about 8 or 9 of us. We were all on our bikes just visiting with some friends, and my mother and father actually found us. They got in their car and they drove, and they actually found us, and they were worried and concerned. That's when I knew that things had changed, because before that they knew we'd be home. They knew we'd come home to get something to eat at dinner time. Thinking back on it, there was a time, I remember I was 10 years old, and I told my mother that I was hungry and I wanted to go to Jack in the Box. I don't know if they have any in Georgia, which I don't think they do, but it's a big burger joint in Houston. So it was 2.5 blocks away from my home. The same distance as probably going from Mount Vernon red light to Wendy's and then come walking back. At 10 years old, you know, simpler times, you could do that. So I went and I got my burger, and I'm on my way back home, and about 1.5 blocks away, this van pulls up and stops while I'm walking and says, hey kid. I look, I go, yeah, you want a job? And I looked and I was like, no, thank you. And then I just proceeded to go home, and he drove off. But looking back on it, you know, it was the same van, could have been the same person. That was my brush with death there at the early age of 10.